Hi, it's Jonathan Hassell and you're watching a video blog from Hassell Inclusion, bringing you perspectives on how disabled and elderly people use technology so you can create products to appeal to this 20% of the population as well as everyone else. Well, here in London the Paralympics are just about to start. You can feel the whole of the city holding its breath again for another huge opening ceremony tonight, and hoping our transport infrastructure will triumph as well as the athletes again. And the whole world is hopefully going to get a huge dose of inspiration from disabled athletes showing what they can do, their capabilities, not their disabilities. As the uncle of a wheelchair basketball Paralympian in the making, I've been delighted by Channel 4's great Superhumans campaign, which has been difficult to miss in the UK over the last year. It's great to have disabled people talking about their preparations for the games most nights, the challenges, mostly those of being the best they can be at their sport, as well as the challenges from their disability, the humour, the character needed to excel in sports that most of us Paralympic audiences are still trying to get our heads around. As one Paralympian said on the show last night, walking around the athletes' village is quite some experience. To see so many disabled people with so many different technologies aiding them all in one place is initially overwhelming, but starts to seem just normal after a while. I'm hoping viewers of the Paralympic coverage and myself will go on the same journey over the next couple of weeks. But not all disabled people are athletes, and it's not only Paralympians who have amazing stories to tell about overcoming challenges. So I was delighted to get a call from Yves Veulliet asking me if I would read his really timely book, Turning Point, The Fall and Rise, about his experiences of overcoming the trauma of having an accident when he was 21 and the impact of becoming disabled on his social and professional life. I'm even more delighted that Yves can join me via Skype today to discuss his book and the challenges he has in it for how society includes disabled people. So Yves, thanks so much for finding the time to chat for me today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you very much for having me today and allowing me to speak a little more about my own experience and the lessons or the inspiration it could bring to other people.
That's great. So just an initial question. I know your job takes you lots of different places. You travel around the world a lot. We met via Skype in Toronto. So where are you at the moment?
I'm based in Belgium. I work in IBM in Belgium at European and global level, but my office is located in Brussels.
Hey, that's great. So talking about your book, Turning Point, The Fall and Rise, I loved it. I thought it was great. It's a funny, moving account of your story, of the accident you had when you were 21, your experiences of the different stages of rehabilitation after it, and how you made a path forwards for yourself to reintegrate with what you call the main road of what you wanted your life to be. It's a brilliant book. So firstly, can you tell us something about the accident you had, the emotions you went through in the first months afterwards when you didn't know what you were and what you weren't going to be able to do as a result of the accident?
Actually, yes, I was 21 when I had this motorcycle accident. It occurred in 1987, and I fell down into a gully because the back wheel of my bike slipped on gravels, and I fell down into a gully 4 meters lower, and I broke my spinal cord. Which, you know, when I woke up at the hospital, I was in a state of shock because I was completely lost. I had no memory at all about what had happened. And then, you know, when something happens to you, something really bad in terms of health issues or an accident, all human beings are going through the same stages. But not all of them do react the same way because we all have different personalities and education, etc. So basically, the stages that you're going through when something similar happens is first this what I call the state of shock. You don't know where you are. You're completely lost. You've lost all your point of who you are, what you can do, what you cannot do. You're completely lost.
Sure.
Then comes the denial state. You realize slowly but surely that your body has been damaged. You don't know yet the how much you will recover or not, whether you will recover or not, which means that it creates confusion and also frustration.
Sure.
And so you're a state of denial. I won't, you know, when the doctor tells you, well, we are not sure you'll be able to walk again. When you're 21, it's almost unbelievable. You cannot hear that. You cannot accept it at all. So you're in this state of denial. Then, after you believe that your life is kind of at the end.
Mm-hmm.
If it's true, that's over. That's it. For me, the life is over.
Sure.
Then starts the frustration period. It's like you see, you know, this eternal story of the half glass, half full or half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And your glass, my glass, was fully empty. Uh, it's like you can no longer dance with your girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
You can no longer go to the, you know, to the swimming pool. You can no longer ride your bike. You can no longer walk. You can no longer dance. You can no longer enjoy your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, I would say, this stage is certainly one of the most difficult ones to deal with. Then comes the state of passivity. Then you realize that even if your life is not completely over, it's going to be very difficult, very challenging for the rest of your life. Your next question is: shall I be happy in the rest of during the rest of my life? Will I find some moment of happiness being in a wheelchair? Because the idea that you have is that you will be stuck in this wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so progressively you start realizing that your life will be more difficult,
Sure.
but you will find happiness.
Yeah. Can I stop you there for a second? Because I was really interested in. So one of the things that I always do when I help clients understand how to create products for disabled people and services is to start by listening to the people that we're creating the products and services for. So I mean, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, did the rehabilitation treatment that you received make you think that your doctors, the nurses, the carers really understood your needs, or did they kind of assume what you needed without asking you? And did that, did that have an impact on how well they cared for you and how well you were able to progress through those stages?
Those health specialists are very well educated technically.
Mm-hmm.
They can treat the disease or the damage that your body has. However, when it comes to human interactions, listening to people, taking the time to listen to what you have to say or what you have to ask, then it becomes very difficult because they are not trained, they are not educated to do that. They are technical specialists.
Sure.
And even when you speak to, these psychological experts, etc., they do have so many patients to treat, that they don't take enough time. And it's not really their fault. It's, the issue is broader than only man-to-man relationship. It's really about the way the society is working.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pressure on them is so hard that for them it's very hard to be able to spend 10 minutes with each and every patient every day listening to them.
Sure.
So it's really a source of frustration for people who acquire disability in their life. And it should be, they should be trained about how to interact positively with any kind of people with disability.
Sure.
And I think that in the long term it would benefit both the health community as well as the patient.
I would agree. And you talk brilliantly in the book, this part of the book, about the emotions. So we've had the emotions of shock and denial, frustration, depression, passivity, when you were in rehabilitation itself. There's a very moving part of the book when you start making those steps out into the real world, is how you phrase it in the book. The emotions when you leave rehabilitation and start to think about how you your new reality kind of works in the real world, where you'd live, with whom, where you get a job, what do you do with your time? And you were also saying that you were experiencing a lot of barriers, that the world that you were going back to wasn't necessarily set up for the fact that you were now re-emerging from rehabilitation with a wheelchair. So can you tell me about how you coped with those barriers, and with thinking about what you were going to do with if you like your new life, the rest of your life?
I spent 8 months at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more than a hospital, it's a re-education center.
Mm-hmm.
And so the objective of this center was to help me being more comfortable interacting
Sure.
with with the external world.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is really difficult when you live this protected place, because this hospital is a protected environment, people look at you, I would say, quote unquote, normally.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are accustomed to interacting with people with wheelchair user or any kind of disability.
Mm-hmm.
And the environment is also fully accessible, both virtually and physically.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, you need to go through this stage in terms of being able to educate yourself about your possibilities and your limits. And so it becomes very difficult the first time you get out of this protected environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very strange feeling, because the other world, the external world, the real world has not changed, but you have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But in your mind, you have not changed. So
Yeah.
for me, when I was 21, before my accident, whether the narrow doors, the staircase, the high sidewalks was not an issue for me. I never thought about it before. But then I realized how many different obstacles, especially in Belgium, where the level of accessibility is very low, as compared to the US or the UK or Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very difficult. It's even more difficult personally when you have to go back to what you thought was a familiar environment.
Sure.
In other words, I came back home.
Mm-hmm.
I was living with my parents at that time, and then this house where I lived for 21 years, then you realize that this house is no longer a nice place to be. The environment has become hostile.
Mm-hmm.
Because my bedroom, and all kids like their bedroom.
Sure.
And my bedroom was at the first floor, and I could no longer go to the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that they had to redesign the house itself so that I was able to live on the ground floor. But then you realize that it's no longer the nice place you used to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally new world, and a less attractive one, because
Sure.
it's you're no longer familiar with this world. You have to get accustomed to this new world as well. And psychologically, it's very, very hard, because it's not only you realize that you have changed physically, but you realize that the environment, both virtual and physical environment, need to adapt to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not taking place. This is not happening. You need to speak again and again and again about the needs that you have in terms of accessibility. And people do not always understand it, so you have to repeat yourself again and again. And it's very difficult, because it obliges you to look at yourself differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so educating other people who are not familiar with disability is very difficult when you're not yourself familiar with it yourself.
Yeah,
It's very
absolutely. So that's your home life. Now, obviously, you're in employment at the moment, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But can you tell us about those initial steps into employment for you at that time? How easy was it for you to get a job?
Well, as we said already, I was 21 when this motorcycle accident occurred, so I was still a student at that time. But then, in terms of accessibility, back in 1987, the level of accessibility in schools and high schools and universities was even lower than today.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to, I didn't really have a large number of choices. I had to think about whether to consider two options actually. Whether I would try because I wanted to be included in the society.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do that is, well, there are only two ways to do that. One is sport. Practicing sport at a reasonable high level, which allows you to get some visibility around your activities and around yourself, or through a job. And it turns out that I chose the second options because I'm very bad at sport. So, so the choice was very limited for me.
Sure.
And so I started to investigate what kind of work, when you start realizing that the world is difficult for you, the inclusion in the society in general will be challenging. However, you start to be conscious of your possibilities and your limits.
Sure.
Then you have to consider what are your abilities, what kind of things you would like to do to be included in the society. And then I realized that, well, using a computer, thinking of IT in general, back in 1987, we were still at this very large box of a large screen, very heavy PCs, etc. So for me, it was, computer IT technology was maybe the most effective way for me to feel included in the society. And so I started working in school as a computer administrator to create some to computerize all the administrations in this school, which was really a very good experience for me, both in terms of professional experience and personal experience, because I had to interact with kids on a daily basis.
Sure.
And they are very open, asking very key questions about disability, about what it means to use a wheelchair, how lucky I was not to have to walk. That I could use wheels instead of legs to move around. So how lucky I was. So they ask key questions, very valid questions. And it's a very interesting experience.
Sure, that's good. And now you're diversity leader for IBM Canada and Europe. Obviously, there's a lot of growth of career between being in the school and now. Well, I'm just interested in what your job involves now and how your experiences actually help you be effective in what you do.
Thank you. Well, actually, I joined IBM in 1982 and 1992, and after different functions, since 2005, I am workforce diversity leader for IBM Canada and Europe, as you said. And my role is really to try and implement programs to facilitate inclusion of all employees in the IBM organization. Regardless of their differences, whether it's disability or cultural differences, etc. After all, we are all humans. We all want to feel valued for our opportunities, for our skills, regardless of our culture, of our physical differences, etc. So my role is really to think of the best ways to make sure that all people in IBM feel comfortable working in the organization. And so it's really interesting for me to have this global experience, because although I'm labeled as a mobility impaired person, I have a job that requires me to travel frequently. And so in terms of, breaking the stereotypes, I'm a very good example of this.
Yeah.
Because I spend quite a lot of time in planes, in trains, etc. And it's really, I was very lucky to have a manager who was straightforward enough to ask me the key questions. Will you be comfortable in this job, although despite the fact that you use a wheelchair, which is a key question that not a lot of people dare to ask. And so it's really a very good experience for me as well in terms of culture. But of course, I have to educate people, especially in lower economy, in countries where the economy is less developed, because the accessibility level is strongly linked to the stage of the economic development of these countries.
Sure. And I mean, one of the things that I loved about your book that comes over is how your mindset and humour kind of comes through all the way. You seem to be saying, and I think this is your kind of view on sort of inclusion, that disabled people kind of don't need to be given any favours. They just need to be kind of freed from unnecessary barriers that get put in their way to living the kind of same life, competing for the same jobs as everyone else. Would it be right for me to kind of sum up what you're trying to say by saying that the challenge for disabled people should be like everyone else, how to be the best that they can be, rather than how to get around a world that was not sort of set up for them right? Did I get that right?
Absolutely. There is a clear parallel between the sport and the word of sport and the word of work. We all want to be the best in what we do, regardless of the activity that we decide to undertake, which means that for the athletes, whether they are disabled or not, I'm not sure that we have to call athletes with disabilities superhumans. They are human, right?
Yeah.
I am human. I want to do the job the best I can. They want to do their sport the best they can, regardless of whether they use a wheelchair or they use sneakers. It's exactly the same way of approaching things. And I believe that, to be honest with you, I still don't understand why Paralympics are separated from the Olympics.
I thought you would have a view on that.
Right. All these people are athletes. And the sweat, whether they are disabled people or they are athletes, able-bodied athletes, their sweat is the same. So why don't we have, that would be a tremendous example of inclusion. Having all those athletes in wheelchair, on their legs, with two arms, with one arm, whatever, being together during the game, being together in the stadiums, etc. During the opening ceremony, you would have all athletes, regardless of their physical appearance, all together. That would be the ultimate example of inclusion.
I would agree. Did you see? So I mean, I think whether or not it's on its way, I don't know. But did you see Oscar Pistorius running in the Olympics? I mean, for me, and I think possibly for his competitors, the other athletes that were running in the race against him and with him, that was quite an emotional moment for those two worlds to be in one place, competing at the same level. Did you have thoughts on that?
Yes, it's exactly the same in the world of work. Because I work with people, maybe I'm the only one using a wheelchair in my team. And exactly in terms of relationship, it's exactly the same model as with the athletes. When they had to run with Oscar Pistorius, my colleagues have to work with me as well. And so they were also, they were questioning my abilities, my capabilities. And then they realized that the fact that I no longer walk is not an issue when it comes to discuss together, to work together, to try to do positive things for the company, for the world. And it's also true in the world of sport. Mr. Pistorius is running like any other people, regardless of the kind of sneakers he has or he has not. And so it's exactly the same in my job. When I interact with my valid colleagues, they no longer consider me as someone using a wheelchair. I am not my disability. I have a disability.
Absolutely.
I am not my wheelchair. I am using a wheelchair. That's completely different.
Yeah.
And once the people you work with or you interact with have got the message, you know, it's like business as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really powerful. Thank you for that. That's great. You end the book by including quite a rousing open letter to people who create products and services, and actually people who legislate, who create laws as well. You know, advocating them to take accessibility, to create them inclusively. You travel all around the world for your job, so presumably you experience a lot of inclusion and exclusion in the sorts of products and services and environments that you're in. Do you see signs that the world is kind of improving in inclusion?
I think so, yes, yes. But I would say that maybe it's not really politically correct, what I'm going to say.
Please.
However, I believe that when you speak to the business world, you must speak their language. So if they come to realize that people with disabilities represent not a niche market, but a real powerful market, because a lot of people live with a disability. With a visual impairment, with a mobility impairment, with hearing impairment, mental disabilities, etc., that require an accessible environment, a website, an accessible website, an accessible marketplace with ramps, with elevators, etc. Then they realize, slowly but surely, that making their business more accessible, both virtually and physically, allow them to enlarge, to grow their profit, their revenue. And so, I'm not against taking disability from this business perspective. You should not be ashamed. You know, we are humans, right?
Yeah.
So we have the power. We also have the right to be consumer. And so, if you offer products and services that are accessible from a pure business perspective, you enlarge your pool of clients. So, thinking about the inclusion, at the end of the day, what we all want is a world as accessible as possible. Sure. I wouldn't say fully accessible, I'm not dreaming. As accessible as possible.
Sure.
And if we take this accessibility issue from the business angle, that would be one of the most effective ways to achieve it.
Absolutely. I was saying exactly the same thing to people at Google yesterday. So that's my message to everyone that I speak to. There are a number of models, of business models for why inclusion is important. You can think of legal models, you can think of ethical models, but for me, the bottom line, whether or not you can actually make more money if you make more inclusive products, is where it's at. It is the one business model that never goes away in a recession or when laws change or anything like that. I think it's key. So just one last thing, because I like to sort of end my my blogs by encouraging my readers, my viewers, to do something, to make some sort of response. There are a lot of creators of digital products in my audience. Do you have a particular challenge for them?
Not really a challenge, but just one thing they should always keep in mind. When they create products, including or integrating accessibility features in their product should not be something that they have to think about. This should be natural. This should be mainstream.
Absolutely.
This accessibility feature should be included from the beginning, from the very beginning, when they start thinking of creating products, including integrating accessibility features in their products, should be as natural at thinking about a keyboard with keys.
Sure, absolutely. Well, as I say, the standards that I created here in the UK, BS 8878, is all about enabling those organisations to do that. That's great. Thank you so much for that, Yves. As always on Hassell Inclusion video blogs, the best comments happen after the episode in the comments over on hasselinclusion.com. So if you're watching this somewhere else, come back to hasselinclusion.com, tell us what you think, and don't forget, this is Yves' book, Turning Point, The Fall and Rise. All of the information about how to get this will be below the video on hasselinclusion.com. Thank you so much, Yves, for inspiring us today. This will be going out a few days into the Paralympics, so hopefully people will be starting to think, yeah, I'm being inspired by disabled people. I'm getting used to being inspired day after day. What more can I do? I think this has given us a number of real key insights for what would be helpful to set up the right sort of world where the barriers are not so high and people can achieve their full potential. So thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye everybody.
Goodbye, Jonathan, and thank you.